Good evening, welcome to Winthrop Town Council meeting for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026. It is currently 6:30. We are in the Harvey hearing room. I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Council Costigan?
Here.
Council Tassinari?
Here.
Council Malone?
Here.
Council Guys?
Present.
Council Romano?
Here.
Council Weir?
Here.
Council Finn?
Here.
Council Vice President Swope? President Lettieri?
Here. Seeing quorum is on. Please rise for the pledge. By Council Finn.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes have been circulated from the May 19th meeting. Is there a
Motion.
to approve? Motion by Councilor Rogers, second by Councilor Romano. Any discussion on the minutes? Councilor Romano.
Yes, I was just looking at them. I noticed that we do have the roll call into executive session and exited, but we don't have like the normal basic roll call at the beginning that shows that the whole council is present. If we could just add that, just so it's easy to keep track of who was at the meeting. So, motion.
Yep, as amended. We will, all those in favor of the minutes as amended by Councilor Romano, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Minutes have been approved. General information recommendations, that's the night we've all been waiting for, right? But we have the Finance Commission here to present their findings on the 2027 budget submitted by the town manager. This is part of the charter that brings together the Citizens Finance Committee and the Town Council Subcommittee on Finance. They meet weekly, pretty much, for a 3-month period of time where they ask department heads to come in to ask questions about their budget, to ask any wants, needs that they might have. Also have the school department in. They had the school department in twice this year, and I'm not going to steal any of their thunder that they're going to be presenting, but it is a very devoted group of people, and I do want to recognize the chairperson, Matt Gorkowitz, who was here tonight. Other members is Karen Chavez, who is actually the chair of the Citizens Finance Committee. Matt is the chair of the Winthrop Finance Commission. And then from the council, our subcommittee includes the chair, Councilor Tassinari, Councilor Dimes, and Councilor Reardon. Also, Bill Galt, Joe Hanlon, Shannon Poolhouse, Christian Bonapane, and Michael Gillespie. So we thank you very much for putting in an extraordinary amount of time. It is, to me, one of the most rewarding things to go through and to sit through, and you learn so much about the town when you're literally going page by page through this budget document. And when you look at the operating budget along with the enterprise fund, you're looking at an $80+ million budget. And it's incredible to look. I've had, so many times people come up and say, oh my God, that's so much money. But when you look through line by line and see how this money is spent and how it is, there's not a lot of fluff in Winthrop. There's not a lot of executives, assistants to the presidents, to this, to that. It's pretty lean machine and run pretty well. So I just want to introduce Chair Matt Gorkowitz, and the floor is yours.
Are you advancing the slides, so I just let you know if you want to?
Yep, just something there, yep, thank you.
Or you can also see. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here tonight to present the work of the Finance Commission. As you've already stated, the Commission has met over the course of a couple months and has met with a lot of department heads. And so what I want to be able to do is just kind of give you our summary and observations of what we've seen in reviewing the town manager's proposed budget. And with that, I guess I'll just start by, again, thanking everybody on the commission for, if you could ask the next slide, please, for their participation. I'm not going to repeat everybody's names. Council President already listed everybody out by name, and so again, I just want to thank everybody for the work that they've done and the participation throughout the meetings. And I also just want to put out a special thank you to Karen Chavez, who's the chairperson of the Citizens Advisory Finance Commission. She handled most of the logistics of these meetings in terms of organizing and getting invites out and working with Denise Quest, our clerk, to make these meetings happen. So I want to thank you for doing all of that heavy lifting. So with that said, I just want to remind folks who may not be familiar with the Finance Commission what our role is. And so on the next slide, there are two things that I think are important to highlight. First is that the Finance Commission, per the charter, shall file a report, so required to file a report with the town council with recommendations concerning the adoption of the annual town budget with or without amendment. So in many cases, we're not necessarily obliged to offer amendments in terms of moving funding around, but we do so if necessary. And we do also provide, again, observations and recommendations to all of you as town council. So as you're preparing to adopt the town budget, you do so with our input and advice based on the meetings that we've had with many of the department heads and our conversations with the town manager and his finance team. The second thing that I think is important for people to know is that the Finance Commission has some very significant responsibilities and authority. As a commission, we have full access involving all aspects of the budget preparation that the town goes through, and they are required to make that available to us and for department heads to be responsive to requests we have for information and questions that we have about their spending. So not a responsibility to be taken lightly, and one that I would say for the most part, I'm pleased to report that most, all the department heads, I want to say most, all the department heads, including the town manager, take the role of the Finance Commission very seriously and have been very, I think, good partners to us in terms of helping us gain a better understanding of the budget and answering the questions we have for them. So I think it's just important for folks viewing to understand that and know that about the Commission. A little bit about our process this year. We kicked off the town kicked it off with their spring forum on April 21st, which is really an opportunity where the town manager presents the budget, and it sort of officially kicks off the budget season here in the town of Winthrop. You can see from April 9th to May 28th, those are times where we met on a weekly basis with various department heads and the town manager. Almost every meeting involved folks from the town manager's finance department to help answer questions and provide additional details. We completed our deliberations and presented you all with a copy of our report, which you should have. All of you should have received that yesterday. And this presentation today is really to summarize the findings and recommendations of that report. And then it's my understanding that on June 9th, there'll be a special meeting of the town council to adopt the budget. We begin our briefings with, as I mentioned, by getting a briefing from the town manager who gives us an overview of the entire budget. There's a lot of information in this budget to take in. And so we start every season with a briefing from the town manager and his team on the entire budget. He walks us through that. And then from there, we have public hearings for each department. We make those notices are posted and folks are able to join. We don't typically take public comment, but we encourage the public to join, and we certainly encourage other councilors to join the meetings as well. And we do, from time to time, request additional information from both the town manager and department heads, and I'd say most of them have been very responsive to our requests. And again, I just want to call out and thank the town's finance team. They attend every one of our meetings and provide additional resources and answer questions. And so they equally spend a considerable amount of time during this process. So I want to thank Sarah and Robbie for their work. It would be very difficult to do what we do without their support. So thank you. For this year, these are the department heads that we met on the left. The town manager, the finance department, the Winthrop Public Schools we had in on two separate occasions. The assessors came in. We met with the police chief, fire chief, which also includes departments within there. The police department includes 911 center, the harbor master, and for fire department emergency management. We met with the DPW director, which includes water and sewer, trash, cemeteries, and facilities, the public health department, and inspectional services. We do send out invitations to other departments on an optional basis. And I would say that on an annual basis, this list ebbs and flows a little bit. If we don't get to one department one year, the next year we put them on the list. And so over the course of 2 or 3 years, we try to make sure we're rotating through every department, certainly the big departments. And you see as we go through the budget, there are some that are just departments that we will meet with annually. And some of the smaller departments, like I said, we swap them out, and this list will change from time to time. But with that, I'd like to take an opportunity to jump into the FY27 budget as it's proposed by the town manager. And I'll start with just a few key highlights. First of all, I think it's important for the council to know that this budget is structurally balanced, and it's balanced with recurring revenues. That's important. It's important to know that we don't use or rely heavily on one-time revenues, free cash, or other types of reserves that the town has built up to support the ongoing operations of the budget. So this budget is structurally balanced, and I think that's important. The town, I think, takes a conservative approach in forecasting revenues, and we'll see that when we look at some of the details behind those revenue forecasts. And I think have put in place, I think, a lot of financial policies over the last few years, which support the town's AA+ bond rating, which is an excellent bond rating. This budget, despite its challenges and its constraints, I think is a strong budget for education funding, public safety, public works. There's additional resources for public health, and I think does meet core municipal services. The budget incorporates a 5-year capital plan, which highlights a lot of the infrastructure needs of the town, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There are significant infrastructure needs, and the town continues to maintain healthy stabilization balances. Right now, the stabilization balance for the town with free cash is currently at about $6 million. There's a building stabilization fund at $300,000, capital stabilization fund at $2.9 billion, and an education stabilization fund at $1.6. So the reserves have been built up over a period of time and are healthy balances, which are important both for maintaining a bond rating and for weathering what we know are economic downturns, which happen from time to time. So it's important to have those when you need them. The town's budget is based on the town's base budget methodology, which is a new methodology that was put in place a couple of fiscal years that really helped create transparency around the cost structures for both town departments and school departments, and I think has done a lot to show where true costs lie within the town's department. Some of the other things I would say about this budget that you've probably read about, this budget continues to support parks and recreation as well as the rink with additional general fund contributions. This year there was an additional contribution to the E.B. Newton revolving fund to help support what's happening there and to help with some of the deferred maintenance needs of that building. The town has funded collective bargaining for town employees at 2.75% for union and 2.5% for non-union employees. And it, I think, relies conservatively on state funding, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the revenues, but I think on a fairly conservative way. So I think a number of key important takeaways to highlight in the town manager's proposed budget recommendations to you all. With that said, let me talk a little bit about revenues and where they come from. Let's start first with the levy limit. So fiscal year 2027, the town's maximum allowable levy limit increases by about $1.5 million, and you can see the buildup of that. About $1 million of new revenue comes strictly from just the Proposition 2.5 increase, with an additional $350,000 estimated from new growth. That's probably a pretty reasonable estimate on an annual basis to expect for new growth. Over the last couple of years, if you went back, there was a significant backlog before the Assessor's Department and Treasury put in some systems that have really helped get through that backlog. And so we did see a spike for a couple of years of almost 500,000, but I think 350 represents what is a reasonable year-to-year estimate for new growth. Those two numbers combined get you to about $1.5 million, and those are the revenues that support the town's revenue in terms of its allowable taxable revenue. You can see there's about 985,000 of debt exclusions for the town, and there's another $2.4 million of debt exclusions for the school department. So once you calculate your levy limit, which again is the 2.5 increase plus new growth, you layer back in your debt exclusions for both the town and the school, and you come up with a maximum levy of about $45.3 million. Now that, it's important to note, includes the $3.5 million override from fiscal year 26. That override was baked into the FY26 number. And so when you're looking at the levy limit of 41.8 million, that is the beginning point of your calculation, and that includes the $3.5 million that was built in from FY26. So it is built in. If folks are wondering what happened to that, it is there, and we continue from that point to grow off of that. It's important to know that the property taxes for the town are the largest and most dependable revenue source that we have. It's about 66.2% of the operating budget's revenue source. So it is very significant. As many of you know, we have a single tax rate for residential, commercial, and industrial. So we don't have a mixed tax rate. You read about that in a lot of cities and towns. This town has typically one. And again, as I've mentioned, it does include the $3.5 million override, and that override is dedicated to the school department, for folks who might be wondering what that is and how it's factored into this. With that said, total revenues for FY27 total $82 million, which is an increase of about 5.3%. Sorry, that's a little typo. It's an increase of about 2.6% over fiscal year 26, which is about $2.1 million. You can see that most of the revenue, about 81% of the revenue that supports the town budget, comes from the general fund. Enterprise funds are things like water and sewer, solid waste, the rink. These are funds where they're set up to be sort of self-sustaining and typically generate revenue based on user fees of the services that are being provided through the enterprise fund. So when you look at the $14.9 million of revenue that we collect to support our enterprise funds, again, they're typically only available for those enterprise funds. They don't typically get commingled with the general fund, and they're somewhat self-sustaining. We have some revolving funds like the E.B. Newton revolving fund as an example, which are relatively small, and then the capital stabilization. So for the most part, again, when you hold off enterprise funds, really the general fund is what supports our tax revenue. And if you flip to the next slide, you'll see that within that general fund revenue of $68.3 million, almost 66% of that is the property tax. So it's important to understand how that's calculated, and you'll see from my previous slide that the levy limit and the Proposition 2.5, the revenue that we generate from that, is both constrained and also the largest source of revenue we have to support the budget. The second largest source of revenue to support the general fund is state aid. State aid, typically grows, a couple $100,000 a year. I think the town manager does a really good job budgeting, fairly conservative for state aid. For example, this year we know that the budget that is in the House and Senate right now does have some additional funds beyond that might be available to the town beyond what we've budgeted for here. So I think they do a nice job developing a budget that tries to, again, rely on a conservative amount of state receipts with the idea that as the budget gets finalized, there's potential upside. Local receipts are pretty, I'll talk a little bit more about those, but those are the third largest source of revenues to support the general fund. Those grow every year, but there's not a lot of upside on local receipts, and you can see there are other revenues that are certainly much smaller. If you flip to the next slide, I'll do a little bit more of a deep dive on what the local receipts look like. As you can see from this long list of local receipts, there are really two categories that make up the bulk of the local receipts that support the town. First is motor vehicle excise. It represents about 30% of the local receipts and is about $2.3 million. There's a slight increase year over year. The second largest comes from pilot payments that we get from both Massport and from the MWR litigation. MWRA, I think, has been just entered into a 10-year agreement with the MWRA. I believe pilot, is my understanding, is still being discussed, but those revenues that we get from those sources represent another sort of 39% of local receipts. The third area is, again, licenses and permits. So something to keep in mind as the council thinks about licenses and permits and what that means to the town. It is the third largest source of revenue as it relates to the local receipts. So when all said and done, when you step back for a moment and you think about the budget and you think about where the revenue comes from to support all the things that you collectively want to do, you have Proposition 2.5, which limits the amount of revenue you can generate on an annual basis, but does provide about $1 million annually to the town in new revenue. Again, that grows modestly, about 2.5%. You do have new growth at $350,000 a year, and that's a pretty steady number for a town like Winthrop. You're not going to see a lot of spikes in that. You have state aid, which again is around another $200,000 to $300,000 annually, and you have local receipts. This year they're growing by $200,000. If you look back, that's probably what you would see in local receipts generally. So when you add up those four items, you get about $1.9 million, and that is basically where the additional revenue comes from that you will have to support all of the things that you're looking to do in the operating budget. So with that said, that's where all of your revenue is coming from, and that's sort of what you can expect both for this fiscal year, and even as you start thinking ahead and plan for the future. That's probably about what you can anticipate for growth in revenue going forward. On the expenditure side, is a little bit of a different story. So when you look at the table on this page, you'll see that we sort of think about things in sort of a couple of different categories. We have our town departments, which total about $27 million for this fiscal year. And when you look at the school department totals about $41.3 million. That gets you to about a $68 million general fund appropriation to support both the school department and all of our town departments. When you layer in the enterprise funds, and you can see them all listed here, again, these are funds that do generate revenue every year. They do grow. The expenses on these funds grow every year, and you can sort of see that here in this presentation. But they are, again, self-sustaining. These funds aren't used for supporting overall general fund departments. Then we have revolving fund and capital stabilization. So we do get to a total budget for the town of about $84 million. Taking a look at the town departments just for a moment, you'll see that the largest departments are public safety at 14%. The second largest, if you actually look at sort of the non-departmental and shared expenses along with the health and benefits and retirements, there's about 5% for the non-department and shared expenses and another 6% for health and retirement benefits. So that's about 11% combined. So that is your second largest category of expenses in support of the town department. So public safety's first, and then your shared expenses, which are expenses I'll show in the next slide, that are sort of centralized on behalf of the entire town, of course, and then health and retirement benefits are your second largest. All of these town departments together, the 27.1, represent about 40%. So of the entire $68 million of general fund resources available, 40% is in support of the town budget, and 60% of it is in support of the school department. On the next slide, you get a little bit more of a breakdown of what the employee benefits on the left look like and shared services on the right. Again, as I mentioned, both of these combine to equal about 11% of the total expenses for the town departments. You can see group health insurance, GIC, and pension, along with, if you go down a few, retiree health insurance, is the largest category of employee expenses. And while you don't see it here, the group health insurance is growing considerably year over year. The number in this presentation is a little bit deceiving because the town put additional money into the group health insurance line for FY26 to help get that number funded for 27, and so you don't see it there, but it is growing. On average, this budget includes about 6%. It's been a lot larger than that over the last couple of years, and in the school department, you'll see a similar, 8% growth in employee health insurance. On the shared services side, you can see that there are a number of things that the town purchases on behalf of town departments: electricity, heat. There are telecommunication expenses, fuel, and fuel reserves, along with insurance. These are things that the town purchases centrally and manages on behalf of all of the departments. And you can see that there's a little bit of a decline this year in shared services, in part because of the property insurance going down. And there's been a lot of effort by the town manager to work on getting that number down. That has been, over the last couple of years, a pretty a big expense that has been growing by a lot. And by working with folks on various projects, we've been able to bring that number down by aiding some of the projects that are needed. Flipping from town departments to school funding, you can see here that the level service budget presented by the school committee totals about $42.3 million. That is about a $2.3 million increase. It's about a 5% growth over fiscal year 26. That number is about 1.26 million higher than what is budgeted for in the town budget. So if you go just a minute back to the previous slide, you'll see, or two slides, you'll see that the town has appropriated about $41.26 million for the school department. The school committee's budget on slide 20, if you jump back, sorry to make you go back and forth, is currently at 42.5. So there is about a $1.2 million projected gap between where the school level service budget is for 27 and where the town's budget is for 27. I think this is important to know because I think school funding is one of the things that as a council you'll be talking a lot about over the course of the fiscal year, particularly in the beginning of the fiscal year, where the school will have to take some action in order to bring that down. And I think there are some things that the town can do to mitigate that. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. Some of the major cost drivers that are driving some of the 5% increase that we see in school is special education, and you can see some examples here that were provided to the school committee around some additional costs that are really mandated and outside of the control of the towns. Employee benefits I mentioned as being a big expense for the town departments. It's also a big expense for the employees of the school departments, growing by about 8%. In prior years, it grew by double digits, and so this has been really a compounding problem that all cities and towns have been facing in this environment. Transportation costs are significantly higher, and utilities, technology, and building maintenance, as our school departments start to age, become increasingly more challenging for the school to manage within the constraints of the available. On the right, I just wanted to take a moment because it is part of the education budget. It's a little bit different, is our school funding. When you look at the Northeast Vocational School along with the debt service for the building that we also help pay for, it's about $1.2 million for fiscal year 27. Essex Aggie is up by to $125,000 for Essex Agricultural School. So we're really about $1.6 million in total funding for vocational school funding. That's projected to go up to almost 1.8 over the next year. So there's another expense. These are not part of the school budget. These are part of the town's budget, but it's an educational expense, and I thought it was appropriate to talk about it as we talk about school funding. So that is a quick summary of, again, the revenues that we have available to us, where the expenses are with respect to the proposed budget before you. And with that, what we wanted to do as a commission is just call out, I think, what are some key findings. Given everything that is being presented to you, where do we think we have more conversations and more attention needs to be paid? First, school funding, as I mentioned, it's 60%. of the total budget. The $3.5 million override is in place and has been used to, I would say, rebase the school budget in terms of creating a new baseline for how we're funding our school system. It has prevented significant reductions, and it has really stabilized the school. So it's important not to minimize the important impact that has had. It is also true that we have a lot of costs that are growing faster and greater than 2.5%, which is what our revenue capacity is, and so that has led to a continued mismatch between the revenue that we can generate and some of the growth that the school is seeing. And so I think there is, for this fiscal year, a projected gap that needs to be closed, and I think there's some discussion on the way to try to do that. First and foremost, there may be additional funding from the state that could be available. Now, that's not a choice for the school to make. That's a choice for you as a council to make, as well as the town manager. But there could be some additional upside that could benefit that. There could also be some opportunity to do some prepaid expenses that would help bring that number down. Some additional grant funding potentially. But there are things that I know the superintendent in our testimony with her has said she is prepared to do to try to close that gap, and I think there are some certainly things on the table that will help get there, but it is going to be an active conversation and one that requires active management. Health insurance, as we mentioned, 6% increase for the town, 8% for the school department. This is again on top of double-digit increases over the last couple of years. This is a fast-growing budget item and one that I think requires some additional attention, and certainly I think the town manager and the folks know that. We have some recommendations later on about that. The Solid Waste Enterprise Fund is one that continues to be discussed every year and requires some attention. Despite general fund support, and the general fund support for the Solid Waste Fund is up by $80,000 this year, from $400 to $480. It does have some long-term sustainability concerns. The fact is the cost of the tipping fees and the cost of trash removal is expensive, and right now recycling is almost at the same rate as trash, which has historically never been the case. I think the one thing that has been beneficial to the town is that I think the town negotiated a really good contract, and so I think the increases year over year have been, while they're growing at a rate faster than 2.5%, they're certainly not growing at a rate that we've seen in other towns, and so I think they have a favorable contract yet, but even with that said, the costs are growing fast, and there may be additional need for not just general fund support, but for an annual increase in the annual trash fee. Public health is another area where we spent a considerable amount of time talking about it. I think going from 26 into 27, we knew that there was going to be some grant funding, some reductions in grant funding. I think there was a lot of concern about that for the public health department. Based on our conversations over the last couple of years, I think the commission really values the work of the public health and what the services they provide to the town. I think that's also evidenced in the town manager's budget this year. He is recommending that we increase that general fund support by, it says 97 here, but it's about $98,000 to help offset some of those grants. And in our conversation, I think the public health department felt that they would be able to continue to maintain those level of services. Infrastructure needs are growing and are a big part of what we need to think about over the next couple of decades. If you look at the town manager's proposed budget, there's about $160 million of infrastructure needs that have been identified, and the capital plan identifies about $28 million of projects that could potentially require debt exclusions between 28 and 32. And then grant dependency. We know that there has been some challenges with grants. The budget before you identifies around $2.5 million in grants that have been lost. Identifying securing opportunities for new grants, I think, is going to be a real priority, and there are federal and regional grants that can help meet some of the town's infrastructure needs. But these are areas that we're highlighting because I think as you look at this budget, I think as a commission we feel that this is a really good budget. It's structurally balanced. It meets the needs of the departments. There wasn't a single department that we met with that basically said they wouldn't be able to carry out core services with the budget being proposed by the town manager. But with that said, these are areas where we know you're going to have ongoing conversations, from the day you adopt the budget until it's going to require active management throughout the year, both with the council and the town manager. So with that, I'll just quickly go through some recommendations, and I know I'm probably running up on time. First, I just want to say this is a recommendation that you will see, you've seen in prior reports, and it's one that you'll probably see every year going forward. Continued emphasis on structural balance and expanding multi-year financial forecasts is something that is foundational, and I think good financial practice, and I think the town is doing a really good job at this. They have, for the first time, provided the commission with a multi-year forecast of revenue and expenses, and I think it was well done, and one that we think should be enhanced and eventually published alongside the annual operating budget. Again, I talked a little bit about their conservative revenue practices and maintaining the strong stabilization funds and reserves, as well as continuing their focus on the 5-year capital plan, just so that we have a better sense of the long-range planning that's necessary. The next recommendation is to monitor and enforce short-term rentals. There's a lot of discussion about this, and I know there's a lot of talk around town about the various the activities and the number of short-term rental properties that are that you can find if you decide to search for them or want to rent one. But we think that presents both an opportunity and a challenge for the town, both in terms of revenue, but also in terms of enforcement. So we're looking to potentially evaluate and purchase a software application that allows us to better, as a town, monitor what's happening in this space so that we can meet the challenges of proper enforcement, and so that town departments are able to coordinate enforcement of it, while at the same time generating the revenue that should be generated from doing it properly and having them permitted. Ensuring the solid waste enterprise fund is sustainable. Again, this is one that we've talked a bit about, and one that would probably need more conversation both this fiscal year and next. There has been a really good attempt by the town to make the fund more structurally balanced. We did have in prior fiscal years over-reliance on some of the retained earnings, and now we've gotten away from that a little bit. This budget continues to reduce reliance on retained earnings, but it also relies on more general fund revenue and potentially even a trash fee increase because the cost of trash removal is growing as much as it is. So I think part of the recommendation here is trying to take a look view on this and really think about what's needed. I think at some point it'd also be it behooves us to try to build in the ability to build up some retained earnings so that we have a little bit of a cushion for market fluctuations or for emergencies. I don't think we're there yet, but it's certainly, I think, more of the long-term planning will help us get there. Next is, again, the Health Commission, the GIC, and looking at sort of our health benefits generally. This refers to, a health insurance review commission. I think typically as our contract with GIC comes up for renewal, there's a requirement that we have a public employee committee, which could be part or parcel of this. It could be separate or it could be part of the same. But I think what we're suggesting here is that we have a comprehensive review that looks at contribution ratios, plan design, buyout programs, maybe perhaps similar to a buyout program that the state offers, retiree benefits and calculations. And so this is really speaking more about a holistic view about what our health benefits should look like, recognizing that we still want to be competitive and we still want to be able to recruit future hires. We know that this is one of the things that is attractive and makes Winthrop an attractive place to work for. And I think that's factored into some of our collective bargaining conversations, so I don't want to minimize that. It's important to make sure that we can do it. On the other hand, we also have to recognize that it is an area of the budget that's growing substantially year over year, and we want to make sure that we're thinking about what that might look like long term. And it doesn't have to affect current employees. It can also be a prospective view of how we want to think about things. The next is leveraging AI. And I just want to be, very clear to say that, we're not talking about AI as a way of reducing the workforce or negatively impacting labor, but thinking about it as a way of assisting folks to be able to do their jobs more efficiently and to help become the town become more efficient, not just with the tasks that our employees are doing, but the interaction between our employees and the general public. These things could be as simple as grant writing. Talked a little bit about grant dependency. AI in terms of being able to search for opportunities and actually write grants is an amazing tool, and one that I think would be very helpful to our current workforce. Records management, public notification, procurement reviews, making sure we're getting the best value by leveraging AI to do analysis. I think is opportunities that could be evaluated. And certainly I think this combined with another recommendation we have, which is really focusing on getting a CIO for the town so we can really focus on our technology needs, I think could actually complement each other. Another recommendation we have is developing level service agreements, particularly as it relates to the athletic fields. A lot of discussions this year around athletic fields, and while I think there may have been some agreements, next slide please, there may have been some agreements in place. I think what we're suggesting is that a more formal agreement that documents not just who's doing what, but the level of service that should be provided, I think would be helpful in understanding the relationship. I think the town, does a good job about different departments sharing resources and helping each other out, but sometimes in the effort of doing so, it can get confusing in terms of who's responsible for what, particularly over a long period of time. Creation of a long-term E.B. Newton building strategy. As I mentioned, one of the things in this budget, for the first time, there's a general fund contribution to the E.B. Newton revolving fund. This was in part to tackle some deferred maintenance, but we also know that this year, for example, there was an effort to try to get some of the town departments to pay rent, which I think is a good idea and one that allows the town to be able to pay revenue into the revolving fund that can then help support and maintain the operations that either the town departments or folks renting from the E.B. Newton can have a better building, and so that we can keep up with some of those maintenance needs. That said, I think what we're suggesting is that the rents that are paid should probably be on a schedule and something that's a little bit more predictable and transparent, and trying to have sort of a more of a long-term plan for how we want to generate revenue and how we should generate revenue from the folks that are using it, whether they're town departments or not, and then how those revenues are used to then support the building. I think would be something that would be beneficial. And, my sense is that that's the direction that the town and the town manager wants to head in, and we're just trying to be a little bit more specific about what we thought would be helpful for folks to see. Moving right along, address the public health grant exposure. This year, I think the town has done, and want to commend the town manager and others for finding the resources to help shore up the public health department and certainly the services they provide. Again, this is another department that has been highly grant dependent over the years, and one where while I think it's important to continue to find other grants, I think we need to evaluate, what services are core, we consider core, and think about perhaps having more general fund resources dedicated to supporting that. The next is developing a master plan and a CIO function. This is a recommendation that we had last year, and I know in talking with the town manager and his team, this is something that everybody is focusing on wanting to do and wanting to do well. And there's a lot of different ways we can approach this through, through regional efforts, but also through leveraging, assistance from colleges and universities where we may be able to get some really some assistance. Some towns do actually use colleges and universities now for some of their operations, and entering into some agreements where we could probably meet our needs for doing so in a way that is cost effective. But I do think overall a master plan for how we think about this and bringing in a CIO to focus on is important. Next two items are a bit stragglers, but the other couple of things that we talked about is supporting our ambulance service department. This is probably a little bit more long term because certainly not something that could happen until the new fire station is in place, but there has been talk about expanding having a town operated ambulance service and expanding our EMS. I think there's some opportunities that most important being service delivery to the town, but also secondarily the fact that it would generate revenue to support its operations and therefore being able to provide better service to our residents while also not necessarily having significant additional costs to the budget. And then the last is the long-term capital plan and our outlook. and just continuing to, I think the town's done a really good job expanding upon that, and has done a really good job identifying needs and trying to align those needs with what we can support through the operating budget, but also through other resources, whether it be state aid grants or regional efforts to try to address our infrastructure needs. These are some of the observations and recommendations that we put forward in our letter to you. Again, I just want to stress that we think this is a good budget, and we want to thank the town manager for putting it forward. And identify there are some things that are going to have to actively be managed over the next fiscal year. But in large part, there's a lot to be pleased about here. Just want to thank again everybody on the Finance Commission for having met and gone through all of the meetings, and again thank you, Town Manager and your team for being so accessible and responsive to our needs. With that, I'll conclude my remarks. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much. I can't imagine you could see by listening to that presentation the amount of detail you guys go through and the granular effort that you take. It's shown, it's a tremendous amount of work, but it's very enlightening for people who attend these meetings and take part in these meetings to see and answer a lot of questions that people have or people think about it. But I will open it up to the council if there's any questions. Councilor Tassanet.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to say thank you to Chair Berkowitz for all the work that he did on the presentation. He makes it look easy, and we know that it's really not. Thank you to Chair Chavez. She did an immense amount of work putting these meetings together, lining up the folks from the town, and keeping all of our commission members on track. So thank you. Thank you to Town Manager Sarah Johnson, Robbie Powers, and everybody in the Town Finance Office for everything they did, and thank you to all the members of the commission. There were a few long nights, but I think mostly what we get from that is these extremely important recommendations that we should really, as a council, dig into and see what we can pull out of there that we can implement sooner than later, because what you're looking at in recommendations are things that can help us set this town up for long-term success, even though we may only be sitting in these seats for 4 years. And it's really our responsibility to take that long-term view. Like, I know it's our last recommendation here, but a 10-year capital plan seems like it's a long way away, but I mean, if you look at our 5-year capital plan today, there are several items on there that were in our 5-year capital plan 2 years ago that just keep getting pushed down the line. So just want to ask my fellow councilors to take a serious look at these recommendations and see what we can pull out of here for policies or procedures that we can actually implement for the town. And thank the commission members and the chairs again. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Guy.
Thank you, President Lettieri. It's been an honor working with the Finance Commission. Thank you, Chair Berkowitz, and a special thanks to Karen Chavez for your professionalism. We are privileged to have such a knowledge dedicated Finance Commission. I can't say enough about the knowledge that I gained during the meetings with the commission. In particular, the public hearings with our department heads were amazing to me. To hear what each one of our department heads does in this town, what their accomplishments were for fiscal year 26 and what their goals are for fiscal year 27 are truly amazing. I just can't say enough. It's been a privilege, and thank you to everybody for that.
Vice President Swope.
Thanks, Matt. This is been a marvelous presentation. I copy everything that Councilor Tassinari said about the work. I did have some ideas about this project, actually prior to going into it, so I'll just rattle them off. I think to strengthen the budget, I would like to see many more departmental narratives and goals, individually by department. I think the biggest thing I'd like to see, and Tony, the manager, town council manager, and I talked about this, is introducing more key performance indicators as in every way. So I know what we're paying for, and I guess the best way to say it is the money spent worth it? So, and some of that could be in projects versus line items. So for example, if we bundled snow removal, we'd understand what it costs to do snow removal. It's projects, I think that's one that I'd like to see. So to shift from a kind of a program, to shift to a program service-based budgeting would be terrific. And I know that what we're using is standard for, a goal of what we're using, but I think it's clearer if I could understand it by service. The operating and capital costs, I've been interested because I looked at all the capital costs and I would consider some of those maintenance costs. Obviously the firehouse is a capital cost, but some of the budget is maintenance, and I'm not sure how that gets interfaced. So, I'm not sure how it gets combined. A couple more things. One thing is, I don't think that many of the town residents have read that budget. And if we could do something to improve kind of a public-facing accessibility to it. So it's maybe 4 or 5 pages of everything, not everything said, but just what our goals are and how we're going to be able to measure those in the future. But I do think that your work is extremely important, and the Finance Commission and everyone else who has worked on this has improved the budget for the last 3 years that I've looked at it, and those are my recommendations for next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that goes into this. I know just reading through the budget, I can spend hours just on one section alone. So it's amazing how every year this gets done, the way it gets done. I just want to touch on the recommendations. I do believe of technology. We are way behind the ball on technology, and I believe the recommendations, we really need to start driving that. A couple of reasons. Utilizing AI can actually be a huge cost savings on work process flows. So the one thing that I looking at the budget year after year, we never talk about loss elimination and cost savings. What can we do differently to save money in this department so we can utilize that money elsewhere? AI can help that. I use it in work process flows weekly. It can help create standards on how work can be done to save time, to be able to allocate time to do other things. So I think the technology, we need to really, as a council, kind of truly focus on that. And the recommendation for the E.B. Newton, I've dug into that a few times now. Still think I looked at the leases a few years ago. We're not charging market value on some of the leases for for-profit businesses there. I do think there is an aspect in that should be looked at too. Those are the two main things I just wanted to touch on. Technology, we really need to focus on increasing the value of usage.
All right, and I will just say, I think one of the most important things was said right at the beginning when Matt talked about a structurally balanced budget and how we're not using one-time monies, we're using recurring revenues, and it is a pretty conservative budget. And some of that conservatism leads towards free cash at the end of the years. But it's way better off being conservative in these budget estimates, being a little too aggressive. I think that's important. I think another thing that when you look at the work the Finance Commission's done, you look at the audit reports that come out when the town gets audited, and you get an audit book, usually later than we would like it, but we get a book and it talks about how the town's being run financially and such. And they give recommendations, they give their thoughts and tasks that they would like the town to address, and they've gone down drastically. I mean, there was 18 to 20 tasks. I think there was a handful, and they'll talk about, I know Vice President Swope talks about this too, with follow-up, not only just talking about the tasks that they wish, but they'll come back the following year and say, okay, this one has been addressed, this one has not, this one has. And this is to a lot of the work that Tony does, but those audit reports are also an interesting read, and I encourage people to take a look at that. Just the process going forward, and we've changed this up a little bit over the last handful of years, where we're giving the council the opportunity to digest this information. In years past, the council would just vote this budget right now, and I don't think that that's fair to the work the Finance Commission did, and I don't think it's fair to the councilors who haven't had the opportunity to maybe take that in-depth look. And there was a little bit talked about the schools as well, and I think a big thank you to this budget in general. Obviously we thank the town manager, his team, but I think a big thank you is to the citizens of Winthrop. When you look at that override that was passed, and you look at this report 2 years in, and you see the incredible need there was for that, and not only for that $3.5 million override, but to create a stabilization fund, which the goal was and still is to prolong the life of the need for that. When you're looking at, I think Matt talked about earlier in his report how new money coming into the town and the limitations were 2.5, and you're basically looking at $1.5 million a year in new revenue. When you're looking at, the school basically is a 60-40 split, so the school is 60% of 1.5 million is 900,000. Then you look at the health insurance line, and if it goes up 8%, that's almost 600,000 of that 900,000. That doesn't account for utility cost increase. So just employee increases and such. It's a very difficult process to get through, but I think the town does a good job with this. So I thank again and his team on this. And again, going forward, we will introduce motions tonight under new business, so we will come back under old business next week to vote these. In that period of time, I hope the councilors take the opportunity to take a deeper dive into this, which was just presented to us, and also the budget. If you have any thoughts on amendments, if you think that there's a department that, there's a really good reason why they should, we should try to move a little bit of money, just to let everybody know if you come with an amendment, they're truly welcome, but they just have to be written in the proper form, where if you're asking for money, you have to also have a place where you're taking it from, right? You can't add a debit without a credit. So, if you're looking to give the police department because they need it for overtime or whatever the situation might be, and you think they need $100,000 more, you just have to find $100,000 somewhere else in the budget to offset that. But I think these are items that, given that week's lead time, will give you an opportunity to take this information, put it down into a granular form, and really look at those opportunities. Other than that, I thank Matt again and his team for all the work they do, and the finance subcommittee on the council. So thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Public comment. Celeste.
Hi, Celeste Beer, Hewitt Precinct 1. I'd like to thank the Finance Commission too. I think that you did a thoughtful, thorough job.
Celeste, can I just hold you up 1 minute, because my glasses, I didn't look. I just have to do 2 public hearings, and we'll get back to you, and you'll be first on the list. We have 2 public hearings. Town council vote to open a public hearing that the town council vote to appropriate certified free cash revolving fund closeouts for fiscal 26. That hearing is open. So Tassimari.
Thank you, Council President. The motion reads, I move that the town council vote to appropriate certified free cash to the below revolving funds to assist in closing out fiscal year 2026 or take any other action thereto. It is a reduction of free cash by $160,000 dedicated to the Pauline Street revolving fund, which is the gym for $80,000, and the E. Newton revolving fund for $80,000. The reduction of free cash by that $160,000 with the $500,000 set aside for the capital plan leaves us with $119,388 of free cash after this motion is approved. We met just before the raising of the pride flag this evening. The finance subcommittee met. We did give this motion a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak in favor of this? Anyone in opposition to this? Any discussion on the council about this?
Just add that
Yes,
it was
that's what
for
it is
these appropriations are for the building maintenance in both cases. So for E.V. Newton building, for the gym, as we move on to put that back together after the demolition of the middle school.
All right. Close that public hearing. We will open a new public hearing for the town council vote to authorize unpaid bills of prior year. Council Tassinari.
Thank you, Council President. Town Manager says, I move that the town council vote to authorize unpaid bills for the prior year to be paid from the current year departmental budgets as noted below, or take any other action thereto. It is a total of $20,232.45 of several invoices that the town received after the close of prior fiscal years. Some of them are pretty old, or just a few of them are old, and that's really due to the fact that some of these folks either lost the bill, some of the vendors, I should say, lost the bill, took their time in billing us, and ended up outside the fiscal year that they were appropriated in originally, so we just need to authorize the town manager to pay the prior year deficiencies in this current fiscal year. That will be in fiscal year 2026, correct, town manager? Everybody's FY 2026 money to close these outstanding invoices. This also came, go ahead. This also came out of the finance subcommittee with a positive recommendation.
And this is not something that's unusual. Sometimes it's disconcerting, especially when you see a bill that was in fiscal 2022 or 23 or 24. You could expect to see some from fiscal 25 that came in after July 1st last year that you want to pay off or whatever. But it is discouraging, but it's not unusual, and it does occur every year. Yes.
As we did receive some information from the town manager, he can correct me if I got it incorrect, but so the total of the 20,000 is less than prior fiscal years that we've also authorized. So we're incrementally doing better, and we thank the town manager and his staff for that. So.
You know, I can just add one other thing. I know it was a question asked at the hearing. There were a couple old bills from 2022, and I wanted to get some information on that. So the Verizon bill was reconciling a past due balance that was only $22, so that was one of the old ones. And then a couple of the independent newspapers for legal ads, they hadn't sent us the bills, so we've been trying to do a better job with them to get those bills in a more timely fashion. So a couple of those were older. One was for $500 and one was for $60. So we wrapped those up, but we're doing a better job with getting the independent newspaper articles in. So I wanted to get that answer because Finance Commission member Karen Chavez asked me so.
No, it is good to know, and it's always good to be going in the right direction, but this is not unusual in any way, shape, or form. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Either way. Anyone else on the council? We will close that. Now, Celeste, lead us off in public comment.
Celeste Vera-Hude, Precinct 1. Again, I'd like to thank the Finance Commission. I think you did a very thoughtful and thorough and comprehensive job. You presented it at a level of abstraction that was absorbable, even though I think I need another pass at it. To echo Vice President Swope, I'd love to see an opportunity for a little bit more granular detail, maybe like a click through. So if it's posted on the town website, we can click in very specifically. I'd like to know more about the state aid and what that source is. I want to know if any of this relates to previous grants or potential grants. I know that you were very specific about noting that the sources of revenue were not just kind of the occasional one-off or potential streams, but, recently we've been aware that there's funding of a program that was enduring for 16 years that is now going to be discontinued due to lack of grants. So I think having that information would be helpful to inform the town council and then also the public to inform what we ask of the town council. But thank you, wonderful job, appreciate it.
Jack Dog, Precinct 4. I've asked this question many times. I've brought it up many times in the last 3 years concerning the negotiations Winthrop and Westport. It was first suggested by me about 3 years ago that the town should put out a request for interest in representing the town with negotiations. I think the last negotiation with Massport was over 20 years ago, maybe 21 or 22, I'm not positive. And nobody on this council was here that was negotiated. I think it was the selectmen that did that. So there's no experts in this room concerning negotiating a 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 million, or $50 million contract, whatever way it plays out with Massport. I asked for council put out a request for interest, and it's a simple procedure. It's the simplest procedure that has ever come across in this room. Put it out, you find out, and I looked into it a little bit. O'Hare, Chicago, O'Hare Airport did something similar to this just recently. And so why not get the opinion of that person that did that negotiation? It doesn't cost anything to do. Instead, we're having secret meetings, executive sessions, banter, who's saying what and why, and who's not saying what and why. Council President Lettieri mentioned at one meeting that he was working with a consultant to negotiate the contract with Massport. And then he mentioned in the next breath, or not in the next breath, but a little while later in the meeting, that he has had 1 or 2 meetings with a consultant. I would think if you're talking about a $20 million, 20-year contract, similar to the one we had, that you would understand and make everybody else understand whether you talk to that person once or twice. Very important matter. So that leaves a lot of speculation about what exactly is going on here. I'd like this whole negotiation with Massport to be brought to light so that everybody in the town can understand the procedure and understand who is going to be negotiating this deal. In Massport, I believe the number that I remember is there's 18,000 jobs concerning Massport. Somebody there is related to somebody here in this room. 18,000 jobs. There could be a conflict that nobody's talking about to appease maybe the people that give out the money at Massport or not give out the money. So that should have been brought to light a long time ago. Instead, the secret meetings, executive sessions, and, bring it to light. Hire somebody from outside the town that's not connected to a person that has a job at Massport. You might get more money than you think you could. Thank you. Thank you.
Marcy.
I'm Marcy Hamilton, Precinct 2. I'd like to publicly thank Anita Preble for all the work she did for 16 years. Her work was just so incredible throughout the schools, throughout families, and it created such a community. And I totally appreciate her, and I think she should be, somehow this program should be funded. I know there's nothing in the budget, but I would hate to see this program disappear. It was, how many times have we had talked about International Night? This is when families get together and they see people from different cultures and they see what Winthrop is all about, the diversity, the kindness, and the experience of coming together at the early stages. She works with daycares and families and early literacy. and works her way up through the school. She does an incredible job, and I would hope that the council might give her a commendation for her tireless work. Thank you.
Yes. Zoom?
Diane, can you hear us? Diane Sands? I can. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Can you
Diane.
hear me?
Yes.
Oh, Diane Sands, Precinct 5. I want to deviate a little bit from the subject tonight and just go back to the last meeting that we had. I want to thank the 5 councilors for their vote. I appreciate it. The other question I have is, I researched a little bit about the exemption vote and the pre-vote, town vote for the councilors, Kurt Lar and Kim Dimes. I did pull something out of the transcript that they campaigned on. And this was from October 16. So they were elected on November 4th. And basically, Kurt and Lar said it's a poorly written law, cookie cutter. I have mentioned at many council meetings and at discussions throughout the town with other people. California has been doing this for a while now, and they have failed epically. They keep putting additional laws in place to keep trying to fix all the loopholes and issues with the type of law. I am for an exemption for our town, and our state should appreciate all the work that this town has done over the years being ahead of the curve. Now, Kim Dimes last week engaged the council and chastised them for not taking the moral high ground, and was seemingly very strong in her language and said, "What is it that you don't understand?" So I'm just reading this from the transcript. Let's see. It's a one-size-fits-all law that is not right for Winthrop. Our aged and undersized infrastructure, our density, and our limited egress are justifiable reasons for an exemption from 3A, said Dimes. So I've never heard why the two people flipped on the February, I believe it was February 3rd meeting, and they didn't even start until January, I believe, 6th. So it didn't take long, and I don't want to be suspicious, but I am. I'd like to know the reasons. Kurt said he didn't have enough information, but he seems to know all about California and all the things they've done, so I think he's done some research. I mean, this law has been discussed for almost 3 years. If they don't know enough about it by now, they shouldn't be on the council. They should resign. They needed to know this. It's the most important thing going on in our town. I just would like to hear from everybody, Kurt, Kim, Jim, and see what your reasoning was for not supporting an exemption that had no downside, cost you no money, and if we lost, we lost. There's just no downside to it, and there's no reason not to vote for it. Personal animals, perhaps, but I don't like what it brings to mind. So I would like to get something in writing from 3 of you, and so I can publish it. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shannon Poulos?
Hi, Shannon Poulos, Precinct 3. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Finance Commission, although I do want to just thank Matt Lukowitz for all the work he does. I don't think that the town possibly understands the asset that we have in him and the time and dedication he gives. But one thing I would like the town council to consider is that, the recommendations that have been put forth, although in the context of the budget itself, you vote on the budget and none of those recommendations might change. I would really, really encourage both the town council and town manager Marino to think about how we can incorporate those recommendations into more of a regular town council update or town manager update, or perhaps even maybe, take some sort of emotion around like what are priorities around the town council around some of these recommendations, because I do think that sometimes, these are often very repeated recommendations. And so, how can we figure out a way and a mechanism to hold all of ourselves accountable to figuring out what of these recommendations do we really feel like have, have the ability to make impact, on our town services, whether or on our budget, and then holding ourselves accountable to, showing, and I think Susan Swope said, there's an element of kind of KPI, right? How do we incorporate these into objectives of our town departments? I think in particular around AI, which I'm very passionate about, AI can sound really scary, but in reality, it's really not. I mean, it's about getting licenses for folks to experiment with. I am the least technological savvy person alive, but I know I've been able to, create efficiency and effectiveness in my day-to-day job every day. And so I just encourage Town Manager Marino is to really get our functional leaders within the town departments to be leaning in where they can to that. It can be sometimes a fairly low cost option, but take the recommendations and really think about where we can lean into those, but not just bottoms up, hey, this is a nice to have, but really making this a top down. We need every department to come up with 3 MBOs every year to say, what are you going to do to lean into a particular type of efficiency? But having that be, part of the fabric of every town council meeting, I think is going to be critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Correspondence, Denise? Correspondence.
Oh, no, sorry.
Committee reports, finance we heard from during, you want anything else to add, or we'll go to old
No,
business?
thank you.
Okay. Rules and ordinance,
Rules and ordinance met May 27th at 5:30. We did cover everything that was on the agenda, discussed the ordinance amendment for use variance. We reviewed some of the submissions, and we reviewed the amendments that was discussed, and we actually have a positive recommendation from those. And then the 4C committee recommendations for the motorized scooters, electric bikes. We actually had Officer Batano come in. Chief Godwin couldn't make it. There were some suggestions to edit the ordinance as written to include a few more items in it, so we chose to continue that. And then the town council rules and procedures, we had a quick discussion on it. I know we're waiting for a packet or something, but we did discuss how a future meeting will start going through them.
thank you. Public health safety.
We met with, the public health and safety meeting was also on the May 27th, and Tony joined us with Councilor Wynn and Councilor Finn, and myself, and we talked a bit about the alignment of the administrative staff on a multi-year interdepartmental planning notion, so that we can strengthen everything we do in risk management. This conference, I think we really centered around the challenges. So for example, particularly water main breaks, replacements, pavement planning, and Tony explained how the town coordinated all of our departments for road work with utility replacements and lead line installations to avoid repeating digging. So I know that doesn't always work perfectly, but he's trying. And I mean, I know that 3 years ago, I think there was one road I thought I did 3 times, so I know he's doing better. But that's still, we were trying to figure out how we could better coordinate all of our departments so that we reduce the redundancy and reduce the rework. We did discuss the high cost of water main replacements and with Winthrop Street, the project was estimated at $4 million and explored ways to better align private development with public infrastructure needs. And this has come up several times just in the last year. I think you remember the example that we're working on projects on Pauline Street. And we really need to think about how that project works from beginning to end. Because we faced cutting down a tree because we had to put in a new electrical line. And that's unfortunate. It's not, however, that the developer didn't know that, because at least he's willing to put 3 trees in or the one that we had to cut down. So that's a perfect example of public-private partnership. So the developer needs to know what his responsibility is before we get involved in the project, and we need to know what ours is and how that's going to work from beginning to end. So I think it's not that we don't agree on that, it's just kind of discussed. It's just difficult to do. And we also talked about, and Tony and the town manager also mentioned that tonight, because I wasn't aware of all the work that Tony's been doing, coordinating his work with other surrounding towns. That's really an important notion. And I'm not sure that we've explored all the possibilities of that. We might be able to save some money on doing a lot of communications with other towns on trash, for example. I mean, if we could get 3 towns coordinated on trash, perhaps we could get a lower rate, because we could agree that all 3 of us would participate in that. So I don't think we're finished with that idea. So we just need, I think, better communications about department activities, and we need to better, I think the town needs to understand the justification of the money that we're spending to residents, and I think we could be more public about that. Tony did bring the 5-year capital plan, the water system capital improvement plan. The zoning and department plan is a 600-page document. It's all in paper. But if we could take those 3 documents, I mean, maybe this is pie in the sky, Tony will probably correct me on this, but if we could mesh that information on those 3 documents electronically, maybe we could decide where the best places are to build new developments in this town, and where we maybe, we're going to run into problems later on that we don't understand because we didn't coordinate that information. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. Can I go on to my next committee? So,
yep, we'll move on from public health and safety to Vice President Swope listening post.
Because what we talked about in the listening post is all about how we could better use an AI, to better use AI to coordinate our work. I know Solomon Thompson. He's a graduate from University of Pennsylvania in electrical engineering. Then his master's is in computer science, but he has his own company. So he came and just talked to us about what he's building in an AI system that allows you to coordinate information in a neural net. Well, he calls it a neural network, but I know we have a lot of parts, and sometimes it's been very hard to put those parts together to actually use the information to improve the systems that we have. So, for example, I've been to the assessor's office many times, and I've asked for something, and they'll say, "We can get it for you, Cecilia, we just have to have a special report for it." If we could get more integration in that system, and I know that Jim and Tony are already working on this, so that we can better understand what we have, what taxes are being paid, what apartments we have, where, all that coordinated together so we can ask the kind of questions that we need to ask. how many rentals do we have? And that's what we're working on, and I know that we've already talked about a software that might be very helpful in that regard. But there's lots of ways I think that we can do this. So Solomon came to talk to us about it, and the result of that is that I'm going to talk with both the town manager and also the town council president, and just deciding on a pilot, just one, what is it, what journey do we want to take? Here's where we are, here's where we need to go, and for free, Solomon will work with us in just demonstrating that idea. And it's not that I'm trying to sell software myself. I'm just trying to demonstrate the fact that we could use some type of work in AI to make our systems better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Firehouse Building Committee met before our meeting this evening, and progress is still going well. Bids will go out for a general contractor the end of June. Probably get those back early August. Plan is to be working in the fall and work straight through. There was a video presented to us, which I'm hoping to be able to get on the town website on the link for the new fire station, to give it a much better view, both front view from Pauline Street and back view from Brookfield Road. Give people an idea of finishing touches, where it's going to look from. You see the setbacks from on Wheelock Street to the building, the amount of space between the gymnasium, the old gymnasium, and the new fire station, the walking path that will be from Pauline Street out to Ingleside Park. So it gives you a much better and clearer visual. Also takes you inside the building. It shows you some of the enhancements that have been made in there. Next meeting is, I believe, the July 8th? July 6th, which would be Monday night, I believe 4:30, late Monday afternoon in the Harvey Hearing Room. So encourage you to go on the website, take a look at any updates, and we will keep you posted on that.
Did you say the 6th?
6th, July 6th, Monday. Council Testnet.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just, this is great news that we're getting so far, so quick with the new firehouse. We want our firefighters in that building as soon as possible. Could we get an update on what we're doing for our firefighters in the existing buildings to get them through this winter?
Yep, we can do that.
The coming winter, I should say. I know we had issues with the floor on Pauline Street, and then heating units and stuff like that. There's always been issues at both buildings, so if we could just, we want to make sure that we can survive the last year in those old buildings.
Okay. Very good. School department report. The meeting last night, I was unable to attend, but I can share that the WTA and the Winthrop School Committee has come to an understanding of a new 3-year contract. The contract unfortunately begins July 1st, 2025, so we're already entering the second year of that 3-year contract. I thank both parties for being diligent, for maintaining dignity through the process and reaching what both sides feel is a fair contract for all. The WTA ratified that contract, I think, late last week. And now it takes a little bit of time to just physically write the contract out and share it. So I'm sure that will be done in relatively short order, but that's a huge milestone for the committee, for the superintendent, and I thank them all for that. Also, last Friday evening, I know a lot of counselors were able to attend the Winthrop High School graduation, which was incredible. 3 hours before graduation started at 6 o'clock, they decided to, looking at weather forecasts and such, to move it indoors. And I know that was a tough decision for the superintendent as well as Matt Crombie, the principal of the high school. But not only did they do that in the afternoon of the day of graduation, but they got a lot of high school kids that came and moved all the chairs from the Miller Field into the auditorium. into the gym actually and did a fantastic job. The gym looked great. Everything worked out well. Overflow went into the auditorium where they were able to watch it on a big screen. It was a beautiful event. And to see, the small town we are and in scholarship money, Winthrop High School gave out over $600,000 to this year's graduating class. Major piece of that is the Fasella Family Scholarship, which was started roughly 8 years ago. You had a couple of just regular people that lived a very frugal life that they both passed. And had no children. When they both passed, they left the schools over $6 million, almost $7 million for the Winthrop Public Schools. And the public schools invest that money in every year. They disperse the amount of money that was made during the year. And this year was the best year ever for them. It was over $330,000 that they distributed to over 19 children from Winthrop High School. And that's fantastic. And then you have the Ramonde family, which was a Winthrop family that just has a passion for Winthrop schools, and they donate each year over the past 3 or 4 years now. They give 5 $25,000 scholarships, and they do an amazing job. And along with the scholarship committee, which helps process all the items that were done by the students, the drafts that they had to write, to submittal for these scholarships, they do a great job. So to see that amount of funds being doled out to a small town like Winthrop is just an amazing thing. But great job, congratulations to all the kids, whether they're going on to school, the workforce, active duty, whatever it happens to be, gap years, we wish them nothing but success. It's amazing the type of students that we have coming out of Winthrop High. And thank you to Lisa and her team for all that, and to Matt Crombie, the principal of the high school. Update on policy making committee. Board of Appeals, 54 Otis Street, lot 189. They voted to grant a variance with conditions. 54 Otis Street, lot 190, they voted to grant variance with conditions. All detailed decisions can be found on the Board of Appeals website. Next planning board meeting date is June 15th, 2026. And the Board of License renewals of coin-operated laundries are all completed. Renewals of used car lots are completed. Farmers Market was approved for a wine license, and a one-day alcohol license for the Strawberry Festival was also approved. Town manager's report has been circulated. Give the town manager a couple minutes to discuss a couple of items if he chooses.
Sure. Just highlight it was always talked about during the budget discussion, but we have contracted with Deckard Technologies for the rentalscape. We've been working on this for a little while to get the short-term rentals up and running. They'll be taking care of getting all the notification letters out because they've got the database of all the Airbnbs and VRBOs that are out there, over 100. And we'll get that out, and then we're going to get them in and also use their online platform to allow people to apply online. What we'll need to come back to the council with is just to establish a fee. That's the only thing we haven't done yet, so we'll have to take a look around what other communities are charging for the Airbnbs and the short-term rentals, and we'll propose a fee to the council to adopt so we can tax that with these applications. Then we'll see if there are any other questions. Sean Driscoll had texted me, wanted to remind everybody about the park opening, I believe, tomorrow night. At the dog playground over at Veterans Road next to Lewis Lake. They're doing that opening tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 5:30 to 7. Obviously, Sean does a great job with those park openings, so anybody wants to go over there and have some good time to go over there and opening that park.
Thank you. And I did notice you mentioned 3A on your town manager's report, and there's been a lot of discussion
with regard to the grant. Yeah,
with regard to the grant.
Yep.
There was discussion during public comment. There's been a lot of discussion on social media. I want to tell everybody that myself and the town manager have reached out to Representative Turco, who is in the process of reaching out to the governor's office to see if we could they can rethink the decision on that last grant. It's kind of comical in a way that the grant is called the CFC grant, which the acronym is Commonwealth for Funding, Commonwealth for Children, which is kind of ironic when they're taking money away from kids that really need the services. So I encourage people to. I thought we might have even more people here tonight to talk about that, but I encourage people to get details about that, and we'll have further details as soon as we hear from Representative Pacheco on that.
Yes, just to follow up with what President Lettieri was saying, did we get an official letter from them saying that we were denied on the basis of grant?
Superintendent Howard did, based on 3A.
I would like to see that letter if you could send it to me.
It was an email, but we'll
Okay,
certainly
yeah,
find out
either
what
way,
it counts with.
yes. And is Attorney Cipolletta doing anything?
Not yet. We're waiting to see what Rep Turco does. One of the things we will go after for, or at least talk about, is the fact that this was a 5-year grant that was approved prior to any of the 3A decisions or any sort of non-compliance that Winthrop may or may not be with 3A at the time. So the fact that they're pulling the rug out from under it now, when it's still a year or two left on the grant, certainly is could be a contract violation. So we're looking at that as well.
Okay, thank you. And one more thing is, I see you also have about the Sail Boston tall ships.
So you might want to comment.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about it first, or.
No, it's fine. Everything's moving forward. Councilor Romano, thank you. He did attend the last meeting that we had with him. I don't know if you want to give any updates on that.
Yeah, no, so I appreciate the invite, Town Manager Romano, the entire Sail Boston team, the MWRA. It looks like all systems go, you could say, for the tall ship's arrival July 11th at Deer Island. I encourage everyone in the town who's interested to please attend. I think it's going to be a great event. I also just want to ask a question. Specifically says that for people in Taft Ave and Elliott Street, there is going to be special parking stickers for that event, right? So the process, I know it's also listed here that and this is good if anyone lives there, that July 3rd at our 250th celebration, you can get them there. Do those people have to sign up, Town Manager Marino?
No, they can just come up, show their driver's license, and we'll.
Okay, so you'll have it ready for all the residents, so they just have to show up.
We'll have a staff member there. Yeah,
Sounds good. That's just, I want to make sure that there's okay. Thank you.
And we'll also offer another day after the 3rd.
Yes.
Similar to what we did back in 2016. We'll do it out at the town landing. People can go up there and show their license and get the stickers out.
And I would also just like to ask that put it up on the website or whatever, how just to get the word out to these people that hey, you're gonna go pick up your sticker.
Sure.
That they're gonna
Yeah,
be
we'll
having
blast it on social media and stuff.
And I'm sure you will, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well,
Vice President Schwab?
The town manager, I know that John has already talked to you about that, but the Disability Commission, just as long as they have some view of this and say, I don't know if they were included in your.
And on the original plan, but we'll show them the copy of the plan once now that we've got it finalized. We've got a little more progress in that. We talked about it at our last
both
meeting.
the tall ships as well as the. And the other thing is that I wrote to Attorney Cipolletta, and he said that one of his major arguments about these grants were that they were not in the legislation, and that he had already legally also is fighting this.
Yeah, well, we had to show harm, right? And the harm was the tree grant. Now we have additional ones that we can add on top of that. But yeah, that was already listed in his response to the Attorney General's office.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
Councilor Testa.
Thank you, Council President. Manager Marino, we have the short-term rentals licensing fee that we have to decide on. Do we have to decide on, I should remember this, but I don't, on any kind of fines or like recourse to someone who is hosting their place for rental that is not licensed?
The fines are laid out in our zoning. This is an adoption. We adopted this policy, so we have fines already listed in our ordinances. That the ISD will start with. The $100 per day, and then up to $300 maximum per day, things like that. So those are sort of layered in there already. I'll double check to see if we have to add anything additional language, but I think we're okay on that. But I'll double check.
And then part of the new ordinance that we passed, I think just last year, was all of these short-term rentals need to be owner occupied to qualify for that license.
That just whatever the rules were, I believe that was in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's any of them that are listed that are not owner occupied, they would assumingly not qualify for a license, right?
Correct. And there's also a cap on the license. If we have, I think it was 120 or something like that. So anything
percentage.
Yeah, percentage, but anything above whatever that number is, we'll have to, go on a wait list, and then, people can get that, I think it's 2 or 3 years, something like that, and then they'll have to give it up, and then somebody else will be eligible for it. It'll be a process for sure.
Councilor
Thank you, President Lettieri. Town Manager Marino, thank you for your report. Thank you for following through with the short-term rental software. I'm very passionate about that, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to touch base on our 250th celebration. The meetings have continued. The event is forming up nicely. Definitely looking for volunteers from the council. If anyone is interested in lending some time that day, that would be awesome. And really look forward to it.
Old business. We discussed these during public hearings, but first one is town council vote to appropriate certified free cash revolving fund closeout fiscal 26. Councilor Tessner.
I'll read the motion again, I'll just.
Motion to waive.
Thank you. Motion by Councilor Romano to waive the reading, second by Vice President Swope. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. So there's a motion coming out of committee. In the motion to vote to appropriate certified free cash from revolving fund closeouts of fiscal 26. It came out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, and I think the exact price in there, so let's just do a roll call to make sure.
Council Costigan.
Yes.
Council Tasneri.
Yes.
Council Malab.
Yes.
Council Dimes.
Yes.
Council Romano.
Yes.
Council Reardon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Vice President Swope.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, motion passes. Councilor Tassinari, vote to authorize unpaid bills from prior year. Similar.
I move, well, I can read it, I'll read it, I'll just shorten it. I move the town council vote to authorize unpaid bills of prior year to be paid in current year departmental budgets as noted below, taking into action period 2. The total for that is $20,232.45, and it also came out of committee with the positive recommendation.
Motion.
All right, this came out of committee with a positive recommendation, does not require a second. Roll call, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Council Costigan.
Yes.
Council Tasneri.
Yes.
Council Malab.
Yes.
Council Dimes.
Yes.
Council Romano.
Yes.
Council Reardon.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Vice President Swope.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, motion passes. Council Millar, town council discuss ordinance amendment use variance, is that still in committee, do we expect that out next meeting?
We do have I have a motion.
Okay.
For sending this.
I believe we voted.
We did vote with positive recommendation on this.
Okay.
So I have a motion here. I wrote that I move that the Winthrop Town Council propose and refer for review the attached amendments to Title 17 zoning of the Code of Ordinances concerning the prohibition of use variances and clarification of the powers of the Board of Appeals. So the purpose of the amendment is to clarify the variances authorized under Title 17 and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 10 are limited to dimensional relief and do not authorize uses otherwise prohibited within a zoning district. Amend the definition of variance in Section 17.4.050 to conform to the limitations established by the state law and local zoning regulations. Amend Section 17.52.020 to expressly provide that the Board of Appeals shall have no authority to grant a variance for any use not otherwise permitted within applicable zoning district. Add a new section 17.52.025 entitled Use Variances Prohibited to expressly prohibit the granting of variances for prohibited uses. Then amend section 17.28.030D1 regarding non-conforming uses to ensure that changes to non-conforming uses do not circumvent the use regulations established by Title 17 and include severability and effective date provisions. So further, I move that the town council refer this proposed zoning amendment to the planning board for its review, recommendation, and public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, and any applicable provisions of the Winthrop Charter and Code of Ordinances. So following the receipt of the planning board's recommendation and completion of all statutory notice and hearing requirements, the town council shall consider the amendment for final adoption in accordance with law.
All right,
Sorry.
this coming out of committee with positive recommendation does not require a second. I applaud your committee for taking this up in a pretty timely manner. And hopefully we get back from the planning board in a timely manner as well. And I'm sure we will. And thank you very much. So, a lot will do in a lot of ways. Anyway, any further discussion? Councilor.
Yes. So I just have a question about this process. So once it's sent to the planning board, are they gonna?
They have to have it here.
They have to have a hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that their June hearing? You just said they have a meeting scheduled in June, right? Are they
They
gonna?
have a 30-day? Do they have a time frame? I'm not sure.
45 days, they have a
45 day
timeframe.
time.
Yes. And is this going to be like a joint meeting of the council or?
No, it doesn't. No. It could be if they choose to, but it's,
Yes.
no, they don't need to. But they need to post it, advertise it, that's it. All right, roll call, please.
Council Costigan,
Yes.
Council Castaneri,
Yes.
Council Milan,
Yes.
Council Dimes.
Yes.
Council Romano,
Yes.
Council Reardon,
Yes.
Council Finn,
Yes.
Vice President Swope,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. Motion passes. Town Council review ordinance committee recommendations on scooters, that is continued. Town Council review ordinance recommendation from tree committee, that's still with the planning board?
Goes to the planning board, same, yeah, have to have both hearings on that and the use variance.
All right. Town council to discuss to formally readopt its rules and procedures. That's also, oh, okay, so this is going back to, I think Councilor Lath spoke about this earlier. I think early last year, a little over a year ago, we had sent to committee to take a look at all the rules and ordinance, and I remember going to the meetings that Vice President Ty Belcher ran, and they would take a meeting, go over Rule 1, 2, and go forward. And I think they got through a handful of meetings, and other stuff got in the way, and they never came back with recommendations. But I know town clerk's been in discussions with former Councilor Belcher to get any notes they might have. So this is technically still in committee. So this is on your calendar for whenever you choose to do it. And just whatever information we can get from the work that had already been done, we will forward to you. You could take that information, you could not take that information, but and we would encourage you to, take a handful of meetings to go over each rule, back and piecemeal, whatever it happens to be. So that is officially back on the calendar for this month. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a time frame for that?
No, soon. It's not delayed enough. But I mean, you're not gonna do every rule in one meeting. That's why I said done piecemeal
Right,
or
exactly.
whatever.
I
Right.
just,
Doesn't have to come back after Rule 12.
no, I just wanna make sure that we get through them in some time.
Right. All right, new business. I have a couple things I put on here, and I'm gonna send them to committee. They're mostly things that I've been thinking about, but one is a sidewalk improvement discussion. It's been mentioned in the past that, over years, through no fault of anybody, we've planted trees in wrong places, whether it be in parks or sidewalks that maybe not be conducive to sidewalks or whatever. And we have a pretty strict policy on trees. Going around neighborhoods and looking at a handful of instances where you have concrete sidewalks that are just being overgrown by tree roots and such. And I think we need to come up with some sort of process, or I would encourage us to come up with some sort of process, a mechanism where a property owner or anybody really, I mean, this is a public safety issue, this is a handicap accessibility issue, and it's just, we talk about our tree canopy and how we want to preserve it for our future. Well, part of that is seeing where there's been a mistake made, or for whatever reason, and addressing the problem and fixing it. Vice President Swope talked earlier about linkage between contractors in the town if they're doing a project. I remember back when we did the old hospital, the linkage there was to pave the whole street from Brookfield and and Lincoln down to Pleasant and Lincoln. And I think in this situation, even with citizens, maybe a homeowner, I mean, we expect, not a lot, but we expect homeowners to shovel their walks and to maintain their property, and we get pretty tough on them in the winter. They should expect the same from us, and they should expect a sidewalk that's accessible, that's walkable, that if we had any damage to somebody's property, it should be addressed. So, I could name a handful of these right off the top of the bat, and I'm sure there's more. And maybe it involves some sort of linkage from the homeowners, maybe it doesn't, but maybe it involves if we had to, look at a tree and again, to address a situation for handicap accessibility and passage and such. And if that tree was deemed to be worthy to be taken down, then maybe we had a plan 3 or whatever the situation is. But I just think it's something that needs to be discussed because there's some really horrendous examples of this in the town that I think we're doing a disservice to the citizens. Because again, our first priority, or my first priority, and I'm sure assuming the councilors too, is for the safety of our citizens. So I would like to send that to public health and safety to just take a look at it, and when you have a chance, take a look at that, put it on your calendar, and come back with any thoughts you might have on that. The other one, and send this to Rules and Ordinance, small commercial vehicle allowance for resident parking stickers. This has been talked about since we started resident parking stickers. We have a lot of small business owners, plumbers, electricians, contractors, whatever, that have, and I'm not an expert on tonnage or whatever, and maybe it's under 3/4 of a ton truck or whatever it is, van, but and maybe they pay a little more for a sticker. Whatever the thing is, I think this is something that needs to be looked at. I'm telling you what to do with it, but I think it's something that I would like Rules and Ordinance to take a look at. But we do have a lot of small business owners that pay the same taxes as somebody who has a residential, regular car, not a commercial vehicle. But and there obviously has to be some sort of restrictions on you don't want an 18-wheeler parked on the sidewalk or a big 2-ton truck. But I think this is something that should be looked at again for our citizens and for our community. So I will move that to Rules and Ordinance. Also, a software program that we talked about pretty much at length already, but this is a program that we saw at the MMA conference. Pretty much all the councilors that were there took a look at this, and it was an amazing program where, they said, "Where are you from?" We said, "Winthrop," and they did the little thing with the computer, and you have 220 units that are being advertised on Airbnb. How many of them are licensed? And 10. And it's, A, it's a loss of revenue. B, it's just making sure we're up to code and everything else, and parking restrictions and such. And as that was said earlier, unit owners that are in the property. So we have some people that do an incredible job, and they take it very seriously, that are providing Airbnb services, and we have others that take advantage in some way, shape, or form. So after multiple discussions with town manager, this program is relatively short money at $8,000, I think, all in. They not only provide a service to identify the properties, but they can send out letters as part of the program. This is something that will be a huge benefit, I think, to the town. So I thank the town manager for following up on that, and I was going to offer an amendment for monies needed for that, but the town manager has found it within his budget, so we don't have to do that, so thank you. The other one, as we, again, come close to summer, DCR, beach request. I've asked Tony again to reach out. They came before us here, I think it was July 1st or something like that last year, and said they were going to put out ramps for walking to the ocean. They were going to provide us with a cleaning schedule, and I might have missed it, but I didn't see any of that happen. So I've asked Tony again to reach out. I don't know if you've had any luck with that.
I did talk to them, yeah. Winthrop Beach is cleanup is on Mondays. They started that program. They're waiting for some staffing to get rolling as the summer kicks in. The gentleman I spoke to said he's going to go through public relations, but they will get us a statement as to update on what they're going to do this year and the ramps and all the concerns the council president gave me. So I anticipate getting something from them hopefully this week, if not early next week. But we'll once I get it, I'll send it off to the council member.
Okay. And town council meeting scheduled for June, so as we've heard from the FinCom commissioner, I'm asking for a motion to suspend council rules to change the meeting schedule from June. So the second meeting in June will move from the 16th to the 9th. Last step, we'll put it on the table. There's a motion by Councilor Dime, second by Councilor Tassinari. The charter says that the council must vote on the budget within 15 days of the beginning of the fiscal year. If the town council does not act on that, the town manager's budget becomes the budget of the town. The council has no say on it. The 15th day before would be June 16th. I am very finicky about the budget and don't want to take any chances of any kind of weather event, power outage, whatever it happens to be, quorum. So this budget will be voted on June 9th. The budget process will not be an overly long process to vote on the budget and any amendments that we need. I do not see a need at this point for a meeting on the 16th. If there is, we can have one, but I don't think if we don't need it, there's no reason to have it, to have 3 meetings in 3 weeks. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Romano.
Yes, I've been thinking about this too, looking at the calendar. And I think it might be more advantageous than we talked about earlier, call a special meeting on the 9th and then move the 9th one back perhaps maybe to the 30th, and then we don't have to meet the week after the 4th. Just so that gives you a 3-week gap twice, instead of just taking a month off.
So are you amending the motion to change the meeting schedule
and I would like
for the July 7th meeting?
No.
Is that?
So what I'm just throwing the idea out there. I just want to see the council's thoughts. I think it might be more advantageous if we move right now the 16th to the 30th, or call it. Let me try and think of a better way to word this, because I don't know what's the most prudent way to do this. But I would like our meeting schedule to be, I have a calendar up. We meet the 30th, and then we don't meet again until the 21st of July. And then we meet the 9th for the budget. So that gives you 3 weeks twice. So
July would be the 7th and the 21st, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're potentially making an amendment to the motion that was made.
So we
to suspend council rules for the meetings in the next 2 months. So to move the meeting scheduled for June 16th and July 7th.
Yes.
To June 30th and keep July 21st the same.
Yeah, and move
Well,
on to June 9th.
then there'll be a separate special meeting called for that if that was the case. So basically what you'd like to do, can I have a withdrawal of the original motion?
Withdraw the original motion.
Withdrawal and withdrawal of the second. So now Councilor Romano, if you don't mind, would like to make a motion to suspend council rules and change the June 16th meeting to June 30th and to cancel the first meeting in July, which would be July 7th. Now, there's a motion made by Councilor Romano. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Councilor Costigan. Okay. And discussion on that, and I'll just say, so if this motion was to pass, I would then announce a special meeting for June 9th. I'm not going to say the sole, but I'll announce a special meeting for June 9th. Okay, any further discussion on that? Councilor Romano.
No, I just once again, I think this makes more sense because then it gives us a 3-week gap twice instead of you have like this big, almost a month, 2 days less than a month long gap. So I just think it lines up better.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. And I would like to take a minute to announce a special meeting on June 9th at, can we do 6? At 6 o'clock on Tuesday, July 9th.
June 9th.
We'll start with the days.
Okay, so there's a special meeting on Tuesday, June 9th for the town council, starting at 6 o'clock in the Harvey Hearing Room. Agenda will be out.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. Okay. A committee opening, so also with June coming to an end, there are several committee openings that are potentially there, and I would like to read a letter. This is the time of the year where I'll hear from a lot of committee members either that wish to be reappointed or wish to not be reappointed, and I did receive an email that I thought was incredibly worthy to be read, so I will read that. It says, "Hi Jim, my tenure is up on the Board of License as of June 2026. I'm asking not to be reappointed. I have served this community proudly for over the last 50 years in elected and appointed positions as well, serving in many community and fraternal organizations, and now it's time to call it a day. I started as an elected town meeting member and was appointed to Conservation Commission. I was an elected member of the Board of Health, then elected to the Board of Selectmen 3 times, the Winthrop School Committee, finally Winthrop Town Council President. I am proud of my service to this community, having served on each school building committee as well as the Millerfield Reconstruction Committee. I consider it an extreme honor to serve the citizens of Winthrop and hope that I have contributed in some way to make this community the wonderful seashore community it is. Respectfully submitted, Ron Vecchia, Chair of the Winthrop Board of License." So I want to take a minute to thank Ron, and it's kind of ironic you have Ron who has served this community with love and passion for 50 years, and now we have his grandson Christian, who just started his first term as on the Finance Commission, on the Citizens Finance Committee. So it's fitting that Ron takes this time to step down. So I just want to take a moment to congratulate Ron on a well-deserved retirement from his service to the town of Winthrop. So thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Now, saying that, we need a lot of people. So we have openings on various committees. I have not heard back from all members and their chairs to talk about the openings that are potentially there. But I do know that there is an opening on the Board of License. And I encourage you to take a look at the town website. The town clerk will have a list up there shortly with, and I know that there is, so another one I know that there is going to be an opening on the Board of Appeals. Potentially 2 openings on the Board of Appeals.
There's 2 on the Board of License now, too.
2 definitely.
Right.
Yeah. So there will be 2 openings on the Board of License and 2 openings on the Board of Appeals. Those are verified. The other one's still waiting to hear back from the chairs and from the committee members to see their thoughts on it. So I encourage people to take a look at that. Okay. Taxi fares. Talked about this with the town clerk over the past couple of days too. Taxi fares in the town of Winthrop, we have a taxi service, which everybody is aware of. And through ordinance, the taxi service, if they need to adjust their fares in any way, whether it be gas prices or just the economy in general or whatever it happens to be, they can't do it without the approval of the Winthrop Town Council. Which I personally think is something we should take a look at. I could understand in years past when that was the option and everybody took cabs and everybody used them everywhere and there was no other opportunity. And I think it's great that the town took the time to make sure that nobody was being affected, because this affected the citizens. And if you have a monopoly in town and you have no other services, you want to make sure that you have a check on that, a check and balance, I guess. So I don't know if this is something in the future that we should take a look at, seeing if this is required, because there are other options for people, and I don't see this as a monopoly in town. But anyway, for now, the owner of Winthrop Taxi has requested a fare increase for in-town service. So this is anybody going from a Winthrop location to a Winthrop location. So I would like this sent to finance. And I believe, I say the amount of the increase, so the increase is, I think they're looking from $8 to $10. I also do believe that there are senior rates. I'm not 100%. There are senior rates, but this would be the typical fare from going from one destination in Winthrop to another destination in Winthrop. And I think there are specific fares going to the airport, from the airport to Winthrop and such. But this fare increase that they're looking for is just for Winthrop to Winthrop fare increase. So that will be referred to finance. Now I'm just going to name these budget amendments that we're going to make, or budget motions that we're going to take up at the next meeting, but transparency, I want to be able to put them under old business again, make sure I have faith and confidence that we can pass these motions before time warranted. So the following motions will be continued. Town Council adopt annual general operating budget for fiscal year 2027. Town Council adopt annual revolving budgets for fiscal 2027. Town Council adopt annual capital plan for fiscal 27. Town Council adopt Larson Rank Enterprise Fund budget for fiscal 27. Town Council adopt Recreation Enterprise Fund budget for fiscal 27. Town Council adopt Harbor Master Enterprise budget for fiscal 27. Town Council adopt Solid Waste Enterprise Fund for fiscal 27. Town Council appropriate funds to Education Stabilization Fund. Town Council transfer $250,000 from General Stabilization Fund to Snow and Ice account. That will be referred to finance. Hopefully before next Tuesday. Town Council vote to modify fund budgets to facilitate closing of fiscal 26 fiscal year. That will also be sent to finance. Town Council vote to appropriate $110,000 in certified free cash. That will be sent to finance. Town Council vote to appropriate $800,000 from retained earnings in the Water Sewer Fund, transfer to Water Sewer Capital Stabilization Fund, and that will be referred to finance. Public comment. Mr. Dow. I'm sorry.
Question on the
Yes.
You want the taxi fares to go to finance, not rules?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's finance, because it's a money.
I get that, but it's not like the town money. I don't know. It's
choose to have
You sent it.
Coordinated.
I'm just asking.
a joint meeting, you can have a joint meeting. You can have
Okay.
a joint meeting between finance.
Okay.
Mr. Dow.
Jack Dowd, precinct 4. I believe there's a discussion going on a certain tree that's right in the square. In years past, when we had great representation with the Senate, the House of Representation, we're thinking about putting aside money, getting money to put all underground service from Midcar Square down to Woodside Ave. Everything underground, because it is a very wide street. It could be a very beautiful street, except for wires and transformers. Now there's discussion about taking a tree down so that they can put a telephone pole with a transformer on it. Right over here at 22 Pauline Street. Am I confused about something?
That's the one we were-
Is this what's going on here?
That's already been passed by the council a couple meetings ago, I believe.
What was passed?
What you're discussing, that tree.
So in other words, we're going a little bit backwards here. You know, we want to have a nice boulevard, but we're gonna replace a tree with a telephone pole. Is that what the story is?
No, permission to answer your question. 'Cause
Go
I
ahead.
know I
Yeah,
don't-
thank you.
My knowledge is that this was passed at the meeting. This was, my understanding is there's a rule with the National Grid that they cannot have a pole within 10 feet of a tree. Is that correct?
A new one.
A new pole. Now, the tree is coming down. My understanding is the owner of the property is putting up, right, how many trees? 3, right. So then,
So this has already been determined.
this has been determined, yes.
It's already determined.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Celeste.
Celeste Rivera, you at Precinct 1. To touch on the tree issue, I think that should be kind of, and I understand the strategy that if it's a detriment and deemed a detriment and if a property owner, should have some say. But I also think that it should be kind of baked into an infrastructure strategy. For example, we should have an aspiration for a certain tree canopy, use that, however it's determined by the tree committee and other key stakeholders, and that should be something we should aspire to when we're planting trees, and then also something we should aspire to maintain. So for example, as discussed in that meeting, right, the concept of if you impact a tree, you need to replace it by an equal replacement or, thereabouts. So I think that as you take this under consideration, that's how we should think about it. And we should aspire to a tree infrastructure just like we should with anything else, right? With drainage infrastructure and other infrastructure in town, and have that same approach so that it doesn't, every time a unique situation comes up, that we're scrambling trying to figure out how we're going to address it. And so that we don't implement a policy that says, hey, you have the right to remove a tree, period, the end. I think that that's just kind of a dead-end approach. I had one more thing. Oh, with the taxi fares, similarly, right, it's probably an antiquated approach, I think you were alluded to, Council President Lettieri, to have them come up every time they want to increase the fare, but maybe to put an ordinance in place that sets the conditions if, the expense of operation goes up by XYZ factors, then that can trigger an increase not to exceed whatever the formula is. Again, you don't want to go to just a dead-end policy or make it where they're coming in and giving you arbitrary information that we don't have a barometer to measure it by. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan. John.
John Morgan, Precinct 4. You talked about sidewalks a little earlier in trees. I would like to ask that if this discussion continues, that everyone, a representative from the tree committee, the Commission on Disabilities, the town manager, if it needs to be involved, and if it needs to be involved, the town manager is the town's ADA coordinator, so I believe if there's anything to do with sidewalks, accessibility, and trees, everyone should have a seat at the table so we can discuss the possibilities without having so many delays as of right now. I'll say the 190 Somerset Ave tree is in civil court for 2 years. How can we avoid that? How can we discuss that and make Winthrop accessible with people and trees? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dadari.
Tom Dadarian, Precinct 3 and your beloved tree warden. We talked about sidewalks and trees, and I had a little discussion with some trees. I talk to trees on a regular basis. They don't want to live in a sidewalk next to a road. That may have been a good idea when many of the biggest trees in town were planted 200 years ago. When the climate was cooler, there was less pollution, less road salt, there weren't big trucks knocking into them. I mean, most of the trees you'll see in town on busy roads have been hit by cars and trucks. So we should try to put our trees someplace other than between concrete, a granite curb, and asphalt. If we can put them into people's yards where they're not going to interfere with the sidewalk, we should do that as a regular policy and make that something that people are willing to do and want to do. So we could plant trees purchased by the town in people's yards. They still contribute to the canopy of the town and they don't interfere with the sidewalk. That's a long policy. It's going to take a long time to replace the big old trees with younger trees that are a little further away from the road. I'm working with insurance companies that are paying for damage to our town property, our town trees. They're replacing the tree and are giving us several more trees depending on the diameter of the tree destroyed. We can plant those trees any place we want. So as a policy, I would like to plant trees not in sidewalks. Where we have sidewalks, trees get bigger and bigger and the sidewalk gets smaller and you can't fit by in some parts of the town. And we should set up trees so that doesn't happen in 100 years. So I am aware of that, the tree committee is aware of that, and we should proceed in that direction and maybe tell our citizens that we could provide trees for them in their yards, in their front yards, a few feet away from the sidewalk.
All right, and I will just say, again, for clarification on my part, that my comment on sidewalks and stuff was not directed to commercial enterprises. It was more directed to neighborhood trees in streets throughout the town that have just overgrown. I want to actually thank DPW Director Calla, and I'm sure tree warden had something to do with this also. But even on Revere Street on the TIP project, the trees that have been planted, there seems to be bigger spaces allowed and different, and the sidewalks wider too, which helps. But it just gives me cause for concern when I walk around and see unpassable streets and us just in some way just not addressing it the way it should be addressed. And we should have our citizens, especially accessible situations, need to take prudence and need to do things in a smart way. And I thank the tree warden for making suggestions to but
Could I just add one thing to your business?
yes.
Double poles. Would you put down?
I'll put
Remember
that
the
on.
double poles.
Thank you. Seeing no further business before the council, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.